Okay. Okay, does anyone remember what Bootstrap is? Nobody remembers? So okay. Okay, so what is it without knowing what it's called?
It's pre-written CSS to make the website.
Okay. So does anyone remember what that's called when you have pre-written code that's there to help you develop faster? Thank you. Yes, it's a framework. Okay, so Bootstrap has CSS and JavaScript that is pre-written and built into it so that you can design and develop the site faster. It's primarily set up for doing responsive design, so that's what we're moving into at this point. So we've already looked at how to rearrange pieces on the page using media queries. A lot of that is actually built into Bootstrap already. So there is a Bootstrap package that you can download from the website that contains all of the CSS and all of the JavaScript that is written for Bootstrap. So the website for Bootstrap is getbootstrap.com. So we're going to go ahead and start there. And right on the front page, we have this nice call to action button. So we'll click on that. And that will take us to the download page. Okay. There are actually two options for Bootstrap. One is to download the code and include it in your project, and one is to link to the code via a CDN instead. Okay. So if we download the code, we have three different options for downloading it. We have the compiled and minified CSS, JavaScript, and fonts that come with it. So, does anyone remember what minified is? Okay, so this has two versions. This has a version of the code that is human readable that you can look through, and this also has a version of the code that is minified and has everything optimized and stripped out. Once you get into, at some point, using CSS precompilers, preprocessors, you can also download a version with less and Sass, which will allow you to make changes using those two programs. But for our purposes right now, since we haven't gotten into those, what we would do is we would download Bootstrap using the first option. So when you download it, you're going to get a zip file. And if you extract that file, you will have 3 folders, just like you would have in any other project that you start to use. You'll have CSS, fonts, and JavaScript. Okay. And there are a few different files. We're going to start in the CSS folder. The first two are the regular CSS that's included with Bootstrap. So the first version is the human readable version, and then the second one that says bootstrap.min, that is the minified version. The other two CSS files that are in here, Bootstrap theme, are for the basic Bootstrap theme that comes with Bootstrap. So you have a choice of either including these in your project or not including them. Since you have already started designing a site, I would not include these because there may be something in here that conflicts with what you're already using. In your fonts folder, you have a font that's called Glyphicons, and this is an icon font. So I'm going to open up a new tab here, and we're going to look for Bootstrap. This is actually on the Bootstrap site. Actually, let's do that. Get Bootstrap. Okay, so under components on the Bootstrap page, the first thing you're going to see is a list of Glyphicons. So you have a whole icon font written into Bootstrap that you can leverage. So you can use things like the hamburger button if you want to design a responsive drop-down menu. You have things for email, play buttons. You have a lot of different options in here. Now, this does not preclude you from being able to use another icon font like Font Awesome, which probably has a lot more variety than the Glyphicons does, but it'll give you a starting point, and I can show you how to use those. Okay, and then finally you have your JavaScript files. So again, you have bootstrap.js. The .js is kind of assumed here, so it just says Bootstrap. And then you have bootstrap.min, and that's the minified version of the JavaScript. So if you're going to use these as is, what you can do is you can copy these files and paste them into your project. So we're going to be using the Bootstrap example, Hipster Cupcakes Bootstrap. So I'm going to put the Bootstrap files right into my CSS folder. Set this up a little better here. I have put in the minified version and the human readable version. And then I'm going to go back up, and I don't have any fonts in here right now, so I'm just going to move this whole fonts folder over. And then I'm going to take the JavaScript and move it into my JavaScript folder. Okay. So this side is the project, and then this was our Bootstrap. So I basically just moved CSS from one folder, CSS folder to another, JavaScript from one JavaScript folder to another. And the fonts folder we didn't have, so I just moved the whole thing. Yep. They're coming up in what? Okay, so Text Wrangler is your editor, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's... Did everyone get those moved over? Okay. So I am going to, actually I already have this open up in brackets. So you're going to want to open it up in whatever text editor you're going to be using, so I can show you how we're going to start working with this. And remember, when you open the project up in brackets, go to File, Open Folder, so you get all of the folder structure on the left. All there? Okay. All right, so just to show you one of the problems with Bootstrap, this is the bootstrap.css file, and I'm going to scroll and scroll. Scrolly. Okay. All the way down. I'm going to get tired of scrolling to zip it down. So, unminified, this has 6,761 lines of CSS. So that's a really big file. And a lot of this you're probably not going to use. This literally includes every single bit of Bootstrap options you could possibly have. So for us, that's going to be fine right now, but you can actually download a customized version of Bootstrap where you only include the options that you're actually going to use. So on the Get Bootstrap website, this is at the top under Customize. And if you scroll down, you can choose, okay, I don't necessarily want the type that is coming with Bootstrap, so I can uncheck typography. I'm not going to use any tables, so I can uncheck that. There's a bunch of stuff under components that you may never use or even know what they mean, so you can uncheck those. You can choose which JavaScript components you're actually going to use. So Bootstrap includes some code to help you make drop-down menus, to help you do carousels and modals and popovers. If you don't plan on using those in your site, you can uncheck them. And you can also make some changes to the colors and type of the base theme. And once you get through all of this, I'm still scrolling. There's still scrolling involved. Once you get through all of this customization, you can compile and download a version that is customized just to you. So that'll make the whole thing a lot smaller. Okay. But for now, we just want to put that information into our index file so we can read that CSS and that JavaScript that we've downloaded. So this works just like any CSS or any style sheet or any JavaScript. You just need to write a link to it. So I already have a link here to my style sheet, which is style.css. So I can copy that. And just link to Bootstrap. And actually, we're not going to touch the actual Bootstrap code. Any changes that we make, we're going to make in our own style.css. So I'm actually going to link to the minified version because we don't need it to be human readable. Yep.
In the hierarchy of things, what comes first? Priority wise.
Okay, so that's a very good question. What we actually want is you want the Bootstrap first. Why would you want the Bootstrap to come first?
Because it controls the structure.
Okay. Okay. And what other reason would you want it to come first? So we're going to be changing some things in our style sheet, and we want our styles to take precedence over the Bootstrap styles. So we'll be changing things even just like the background of the navigation bar. So whenever we make those changes, they're going to be down in style.css. So that is where your CSS goes. Try and clean this up a little bit. where would your JavaScript go? After the style sheet? At the end? Okay. So we actually want to keep our scripts in this case, except for that one, down at the end of the document. So we're going to put our scripts right here. And I've given you a clue. So I put a little comment right here that says Bootstrap JavaScript goes here. So we're going to go ahead and link to our Bootstrap JavaScript. Okay. And again, notice when I'm typing in brackets, it's giving me a hint. So when this pops up, that's a good sign that you're writing the path correctly. So I'm going to the JavaScript folder and then to the Bootstrap file. And that also saves me a little bit of time because I don't have to type it all in. I can just choose the right file and hit enter and it'll put it in for me. Okay. Any questions? You need me to hold up a minute? Okay. Working off the what? Hipster Cupcakes Bootstrap example? What was that?
Is it called demo?
I think it's called Hipster Cupcakes Bootstrap example. There was a Hipster Cupcakes responsive example too. And actually, let me show you. Okay, so this is actually what it should look like if you bring it up in the browser. I think that would be a good idea to use the minified version of the JavaScript. Okay. So this has the Bootstrap in it. Not really anything has been done to this yet. So it's pretty basic. There's a little bit of styling that exists in the example that I gave you that is adding some background to the footer, but that's about it. We haven't worked on the Bootstrap yet. Okay. So I know we haven't talked about JavaScript and jQuery yet, but jQuery is a JavaScript library. It is set up to help you simplify writing JavaScript, and you'll see that with jQuery you can write about 1 line of code versus about 5 lines in JavaScript to do the same thing. But JavaScript, the Bootstrap JavaScript is dependent on jQuery. So what we have to do is we have to provide a link to the jQuery library. And I'm actually going to go to, let's use JS Deliver. Okay. So we'll go ahead and use the JS Deliver CDN, which is jsdeliver.com. It's DELIVR. And if you type in jQuery up here, it will bring up the CDN for jQuery. And you can copy this first one. And we are going to put, I'm just going to paste it here for a second. we're going to put a link to the jQuery CDN. And all I'm going to do is take that URL that I copied and paste it in the source. Okay. So now we have a link to jQuery, and then we have our Bootstrap JavaScript. So this is actually going to a file that we have included with our project. This is going to the jQuery library, which is hosted somewhere else. Does anyone have any questions about that or why it's like that? Sure. So if you go to JS Deliver and type in jQuery in their search, this will give you the URL that you can use to link directly to jQuery, and I chose the top one. You can also get it off of jQuery's website, and Bootstrap should also have it, but I always have a hard time finding it on their site. Right here, if you come down to the basic Bootstrap template, they also have the code for jQuery. So here is Bootstrap min.js, and here is their link to their style sheet, and here's the link to jQuery. So if you were to start a brand new site from scratch completely, you could come down. This is on Bootstrap's getting started page. If you scroll down the page, they have a basic template, and you could actually copy this whole thing and paste it in and start from scratch with this. Any questions so far? Okay. And I'm probably going to keep asking that question because I'm going to show you a different way of including Bootstrap in your site. And I don't want you to be confused and think that you have to use both methods. It's a one or the other. So we went ahead and we downloaded the files from Bootstrap. And we put in then these links to the files that we have in our project folder. So these exist over here. Okay. The alternative to that would be to not download Bootstrap at all and to use their CDN service to pull Bootstrap from their server. And one of the advantages to doing that is that Bootstrap is used a lot, and someone may have already been on a website where they have used Bootstrap and they may already be cached in their browser, so then they don't have to download it again. So if you're going to do that, we'll go back up to the top of this page, and right down here is the Bootstrap CDN code. And you can copy this for the style sheet. You can copy this for the JavaScript. And these would just replace those lines of code in the index page where we have the links to Bootstrap in our project. Okay. What I don't like about this is that they don't prompt you in this section to also include jQuery, so it's easy to forget, oh yeah, I need jQuery too. Okay. So is everyone there? Everyone has it pasted in the right place? Okay. Okay, so Bootstrap's essential layout basically works by deciding how many columns out of 12 you want each piece to take up. Okay. And at what screen size. So it's set up as a series of classes that include 3 parts. You have a column, which is just COL, a dash, the screen size that you want this to be applied to, and that screen size can be extra small, small, medium, or large. Okay. And those correspond to various sizes on Bootstrap. So Bootstrap has a lot of documentation, but it can also be a little, I don't know if I want to say cumbersome, but there's a lot to go through on their page to kind of find what you're looking for, but chances are that the answer you're looking for is here. Okay, so I am on Bootstrap's CSS page right up here. And if I scroll down to the grid system, where did I just have it? Right here. This will tell you what each of those designations means. So for the purposes of Bootstrap, an extra small device is anything under 768 pixels. Small devices are between 768 and 991. Medium devices are 992 up to basically 1199, and then anything over 1200 pixels is considered large. So they're kind of thinking phones, tablets, desktops. Probably most of your laptops are going to fit in here, and then desktops, like very large screens. So we have call XS, call SM, call MD, and call LG. That's how that works. If you do a customized version of Bootstrap, you can change these. You can change where these breakpoints are. So what this is doing behind the scenes is basically setting up those media queries for you. So somewhere in the code, it's going to say at media screen max width 1200 pixels, and then it's going to have the code. But the good part is you don't have to write that code. You can just use the classes. Yep.
Does this still work in, like, if you have a high pixel density mobile device?
Yes.
Would it show mobile, or would it still show for the width of the pixels?
You'll have to, it's set up for the width of the pixels. Okay. All right. So these columns actually also are divided into rows. So it's kind of thinking of it a little bit like a table. Bring up a blank screen here. So you will have something, some sort of container with a class of row. And then you'll have your elements inside of it that will all be in columns. And then you'll have an additional row. So if we want a layout that is, let's go with 4. 4 is a nice even number. So if you want the layout to have, let's say, 4 columns on medium-sized screens. So let's say we have a carousel here. And you have a 4 column layout beneath it. And then on tablet screens, you want it to be like this. And then on phone screens, you're still going to have your carousel, and then you're just going to have them stacked on top of each other. Okay. What we can say is we can take one of these columns, and let's say that it's a div. So we're going to assume that this is a medium-sized screen. If we say call medium, what is 12 divided by 4? 3. What this means is that on medium-sized screens and larger, so this is also going to apply to large screens, we want this block to take up 3 columns out of 12. Okay. So I'm going to come down here just because I'm running out of space, but this is all going to be one line. So we're going to put a space in here and then say at small screen sizes, we want this to take up 12 divided by 2, which is what? 6. Okay. And then on extra small sizes, we want it to take up all 12 columns. So each of these is a separate class. Call medium 3, call medium 6, call extra small 12. So all you're doing when you're writing this in one line is putting a space between them. And this will automatically take care of the layout of the site in terms of rearranging them. So that on a medium-sized screen or larger, it'll be 4 columns. On a small screen or larger, it will be 6, except we have something larger designated. Okay, and then on anything extra small or larger, it's going to be 12. So this will apply to anything larger than it unless there's another class that overrides it. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's do that with our cupcakes. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Should be 8. Maybe I only have 6. 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, they're only 6. All right, so we're going to go ahead and let's lay this out in a 3-column layout. So I'm going to scroll down and I am going to find those cupcakes in my code. So what I have right now, oops, let's erase all this so we can actually see. Okay. So each of these individual cupcakes, which consists of an image, a heading, and then a short description, is contained in an article tag. So what I'm going to do is put a row around them, and I'm going to put this row div around all 6 of them because I want them all to interact with each other. So I'm starting that div up here on, for me, what is line 52, right above the first article tag. Oops, I'm going to take that out. And then I'm ending it down beneath the last article down here. This is, by the way, a cupcake ipsum, which you should definitely use. Okay. So for each of these articles, what I'm going to do is say that I'm going to give it a class of call medium 4. Okay. So if I'm making that block 4 columns, how many columns will there be across the page at this screen size? It'll be 3. Okay. And then on small screen sizes, I want this to be 6, which is going to be how many across? 2. And then I want them to take up the whole page on phone screens. So I actually need to repeat this for all of my articles. And actually I skipped one. So I'm just going to copy and paste. The other thing you could do, or you could have done, is close up these articles by clicking the arrows here and then putting in a multiple cursor. So if you click in one place and hold down Control on a PC, Command on a Mac, and click again, you get multiple cursors. And then when you type, you can type it in all at once. Your choice, either one, whatever makes it more convenient for you. Okay, so now if we look at our screen, we have everything mostly laid out. Okay. So does anyone have it perfectly laid out 4 across the page? You do? Or 3 across? Does anyone have a glitch like this where one's kind of sticking out further? Okay. So theoretically, it should look like this. They should be nice and even 3 across. But what's going on is that at this zoom level, this text is all the same number of lines. So you have 3 lines, 3 lines, and 3 lines. At this zoom level, what has happened is that this middle one has actually gotten to be a little bit longer. It's gone to 4 lines. And these column layouts are based on floats. So they're trying to go up and as far over to the left as possible. And what's happening with this one is that it's going up and it's going left and it's hitting this one because it's just a little bit longer than the others. So if you get on Bootstrap's website, okay, so you've run across this problem, you're like, now what? You can search for an answer to this, and you will find out that there is a clear fix option that you can put on here that will allow it at different sizes to readjust and to adjust for that. Okay, so it'll basically say, okay, whenever it's at medium screen sizes, we're going to put in a clear fix, and that's going to push this over here, and everything's going to line up the way you expect it to. You'll probably find out, though, that you'll have to put several of them in because it's going to break again at another screen size. So you'll need to be able to figure out how to do that. But let's see what this looks like. Okay. All right, so we have 2 up on the iPad and 1 up on the iPhone. Okay. Does it make sense how the column system works? Does anyone have any questions on how the column system works? Oh. Where would you do what? Okay. So on the CSS, or on the Bootstrap website, on their CSS page, they have this clear fix. Okay. So I'm not going to include that as part of the demo because I think that's a nice, easy one for you guys to figure out and to be able to go through and get used to Bootstrap's documentation and how it's laid out. So when you run across problems, you can troubleshoot them. Yeah. Is there a certain section you want me to be in?
I just never got the whole.
Oh, sure. Is it? Really?
We went over Bootstrap in the mobile applications class, but we didn't go over it.
Oh, okay.
He's like, put these lines of code in your code.
Is that Dimitri's class? Okay, yeah. I think because it's not a user-centered design class, he just wants to get you guys up and running quickly so you can work on your applications. Is everybody ready for me to tackle the next thing? Okay. Yes, this is all within div class row. So here's the row, and I have it ending down here. Okay, so another thing that Bootstrap uses are containers. And basically what a container is going to do is it's going to contain your content and keep it from the edges of the screen, so you don't have to add things like padding manually. So right now we're kind of squished up against the side of the screen. So what I can do in my code is I can add yet another div, yay. And I can give it a class of content container. And I am going to end this div down here. And as long as I put everything in the right place, I don't think I did. Let's see. Yes, there is actually. Oh, this is why I didn't actually get rid of that when I copied it. Okay. So what it did, maybe not too dramatically, but it gave us some space, just a little bit of padding on either side of the web page. And I'm going to add a similar one around line 40, which is where our about is. And I'll explain to you why I'm adding 2. So what that did, since it reloads, is actually gave us some space around our about section too. So the question might come up then, why didn't I just put the container starting here and end it all the way down here? And the reason is that for this website, what I have in mind is a striped website. So I'm going to put one color behind Hipster Cupcakes and then a different color here. And if I put all of this inside of the container, then there's going to be a white strip on either side, and I don't want that. I want to be able to control that outer div, the background color, to make it go clear to the edge, and then I want a container inside of that to actually give some space for the content. Is everyone, I know like live coding and trying to keep up is sometimes difficult. Is everyone in a good spot? Okay. So up here, you can see I have an outer div that has an ID of about, and then I have the container inside of it. So I'm going to target this about, and if I press, this is in brackets, if I press Control E, have I shown this to you? It will open up a little box down here where you can write your CSS. And I am going to choose to write the CSS in my style.css because this is something that I'm adding to the site. So I'm not going to put it in Bootstrap. I'm going to put it in my styles. And it's going to auto create this for me. And I think that selector is fine in this case, so I'll keep it. And we'll give it a background color of pick something kind of pinky. Let's do, actually, we'll just do pink. Okay. So the background color is going clear to the edge, and then inside of that, it's adding this padding and pushing the content in from the sides. And then I'm going to go in and just make my all over, excuse me, body background color. Papaya whip for fun. Okay, just to add a little bit of color to this. It's really subtle, especially on the screen. It's kind of like an off-white color. It's not working? Which part is not working? Okay. Check your, are you using brackets? Check up in the corner and make sure that the lightning bolt is turned on. Oh, okay. I think I might know why. So when you do Control E, you can tell me if this solves the problem. If not, we'll go with it. I had to actually put the cursor into the ID, so the cursor is actually sitting in the word about, and then I press Control E. Otherwise, it's not sure what you want to target. Did that solve it? Okay. Okay, so that's actually a good point to make. So this is why I have you do a file open folder, because there are certain things like index.html, style.css that are common names, and it's really easy to make a change to the wrong file. So if you go to File, Open Folder, and open the entire project, then the style.css and the index.html that are in here belong to that project. If you just open individual files, you could have like both style.css as open at the same time and not be sure which one's which.
I usually just close everything out because I'm not sure where it's coming from.
Okay. When you open the folder, it should theoretically close all of those other files, but if you need to close everything just for peace of mind, yeah.
That happened to me too. I was changing things. I wasn't intending on changing.
Okay. So the layout in Bootstrap definitely does not preclude adding your own CSS. So there might be some things we might want to do, like maybe centering this text underneath the images. Those sorts of things which you've already learned, you can just go ahead and continue to style the same way you've been styling them. All right. So I'm going to introduce you very quickly to an offset. So what we're going to do is we are going to take these two paragraphs and we're going to set them up so that they line up side by side on larger screens and then stack like this on the smaller screens. So I'm going to go back to roughly around line 40 where this about is. And in each of these paragraphs, so I'm going to use a multiple cursor to do this. I'm going to give them a class of call medium. And I'm gonna use an odd number this time. So I'm going to say 5. So right now these do not add up to 12. So what happens when you have two that designations that do not add up to 12? What they're going to do is take up whatever space you've told them to take up. So in this case it's 10 columns, but they're going to be left justified. And this doesn't look too hot that way. We actually want to push them over and center them. So there is a class called offset, and it works the same way as the columns do. We're going to say call medium because we want this to take effect on medium screens and larger. We're going to say offset by 1 column. And now when I reload this, everything shifted over 1 column. So now we have the 2 columns, but they're centered even though they don't take up 12 columns of space. It's call MD and then dash offset and then the number of columns you want to offset by. The 1 is how many columns we want to push it to the right, and we're pushing, by putting it on the first one, it's actually pushing them both over. So now basically what we have is an empty, instead of having 10 columns of content and 2 empty columns over here, we have empty column, content, content, and empty column. Yep. So the number of columns, that's all up to you and your design and how you want to set it up. Pretty much this example was just to show you how offset works. So you can decide, maybe you just want it to make it easy and just have it be 6 columns, 6 and 6. That's fine too. Okay, so that is very, very basic Bootstrap layout. That's the essential of it. As you can see, on every single Bootstrap page, and there are 5 of them, you can scroll to your heart's content and find out a lot more information about Bootstrap, and there are a lot of other things that you can do with it, but this gives you the starting point for getting the layout set up. And you could actually, just using this, make your site responsive for the final. Just using columns, not even digging any deeper into Bootstrap. Okay. Now our, whoops, wrong thing. I have like 50 of these open. Okay, so right now we have our navigation as an unordered list on the top left. And if we look back at the code, that's basically what it is. So we have a navigation tag around an unordered list, and then we have all of the links. And I did want to point this out on yours. You said that your styles for your unordered list were interfering with other unordered lists. If you wrap that in a nav tag, it'll first of all make it semantic, so screen readers will know it's navigation, and then you can use the nav tag to target that unordered list. All right. What if you already used the nav tag? You could give it an ID. Yeah. So that's what the IDs and classes are for targeting things that are very specific. Class just gets used for multiple elements. If you have many elements that all need that style, you use a class. If you just have one, you would use an ID. So, did anyone try to play with the slide-in navigation from the example last week? At least you all admit it. Okay. So, Bootstrap has some responsive navigation built into it. And I am not going to torture you by making you sit here and watch me type out all like 20 some lines of code. So there is an HTML file called navigationcode.html that has everything conveniently in there. And we're just going to copy and paste. And I'm going to show you where you would find this on Bootstrap. So we're going to copy that entire file. I'm going to go back into my index, and I'm going to highlight from navigation to closing navigation and paste that in and replace it. Okay. So this is one of the places where classes in Bootstrap start to get crazy because you have like 6 classes on one thing. Okay. And now if I refresh my page, this has laid out kind of what is the basic Bootstrap navigation. So I have my Hipster Cupcakes brand on the left and the navigation on the right. And it has a little bit of a scroll built into it. The page isn't quite long enough to hit all of the pieces, but as I scroll down, it shows up. It highlights that we're on About and that now we're on Cupcakes. And that would need some adjustment, but it is built in. And I do believe that this is under components. Okay. So there is a navigation section on the components page. It's right below glyphicons. And it will give you some example code for how to make different types of navigation. So you have some code for a drop-down menu. And I think there's actually another place where we can access navigation in Bootstrap. Okay. So under components, and they do have kind of an index here on the right, there's navs and navbar. And they talk about color schemes and containers and responsive and different types of navigation that you can make. So in our example, what we have is a nav tag with all of these classes, and these classes are all in those examples that you can find on Bootstrap. So this is a class of navbar default, which is actually a class that gives it color. So that's what's making it gray. We could make this navbar inverse, and it should make it black with white text instead. So those are some of the built-in themes that you can use or not use. And then you have this button that has a class of navbar toggle collapsed. And what this is this is going to be the button that turns into the hamburger button when we change the screen size and makes this a responsive menu. So as I move the page around, we have a full navigation bar, and I get down to this point and it collapses into a hamburger, and when I click on it, it will come out from the top. This is where you'll find out if you have your JavaScript link written correctly. If this does not work, if you get a hamburger button and nothing changes when you click on it, that means you're not hooked up to the Bootstrap JavaScript correctly, because it's JavaScript that's making this work. So I just want to point out this class, the navbar fixed top. This is the class that is going to keep the navigation fixed to the top of the screen, so as I scroll, that navigation is staying up there. So one of the problems we're having, however, is that when we get on this page originally, what's wrong with the top of the screen? Okay, so it's cut off. And that happens a lot with fixed navigation, that this is taking up a certain amount of space, and because it's fixed, all of your content is going to go up underneath it, and you don't want it to look like that. You want to move that down. So any idea how we would resolve that? Guesses? So it's actually a relatively simple fix. You just basically need to put some margin at the top of the page to push the whole thing down. And the navigation for Bootstrap by default, unless you change it, is going to be about 75 pixels. So if you give a top margin of around 100 pixels, that will bring it down, give a little space between the content and the navigation bar, and give you some space. I probably just broke something. Okay, I may have broken it. Let's find out. No, okay, it worked. Okay, so that might be too much. We can adjust it. Okay. So this is a good place to use something like your inspector tools, because you can make changes here and you can see the adjustments made live on your screen, and then you can take this information, you can put it back into your code. So 100 pixels seems to be too much, so I can double click on, I can actually go up here to where my HTML is and find the body tag, because that's where I put the margin. And all of the styles that are associated with body are going to be right down here. So I found my margin top, and I can just literally use my arrow keys to change that number and get it to where I want it. And this is actually a little shorter than I thought. So I guess it's 50. I was thinking it was 75. So I can visually see where that's going to be at a good point. So actually what I will probably do is leave this margin top at 50 and then just add a little extra padding in here to drop that content down. So that is my about section. And I can type a new rule right in here. So let's say margin, or let's say padding top. Also 50 pixels. Okay. Now this is not going into your code. This is just for you to troubleshoot and kind of see where you want things to be. Yep. Questions? Okay, so a lot of the learning on this is going to come from looking at examples on Bootstrap's site, and actually this is a lot of learning in web development and coding anyway, is being able to read through code that does what you want it to do and decipher it, and then be able to figure out what different items do and how to change them to make it work the way you want. That's going to be a lot of your learning process outside of this class, and that's what developers pretty much do every day. Is they come across a problem, you'll research it, look for a solution if you don't know how to solve it already with the skills that you have, and then figure out how to apply it to your site. You'll probably end up doing way more research than actually typing. I made a comment to a coworker one time that we spent 2 days typing 4 lines of code, which is pretty much true. Okay. Questions about like the basic concept of Bootstrap? Yep. You can't get the which? Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take a break here. Let's go ahead and stop this.